Interview of Mario DiCarlo, September 7th, 2016. Here I go. Good morning. What's your name?
Mario DiCarlo.
And Mario, when were you born?
January 18, 1922.
Mario, where were you living prior to going into the Marine Corps?
56 Beecher, 34 Beecher Place.
Now, can you tell me about
Newton, Mass.
Newton. Can you tell me about your how many brothers and sisters you had? How many brothers and sisters did you have?
I have 5 brothers. I'm the youngest of them, and 1 sister.
And when did you go to high school? Where did you go to high school?
Newton High.
And when did you graduate?
40.
And what did you do before you went in the Marine Corps?
Before I went in the Marine Corps, I went on. Eleanor Roosevelt established the Youth Administration, and I went up to Maine, and she sent us young fellows from high school, and I learned how to fix airplane engines and make airplane wings. And that school lasted for 2 months. Then I came home and I went to work at Raytheon, and I had enlisted at the United States Marines. They wouldn't take me because I was working at Raytheon as an essential worker repairing meters for the magnetron tube. And they kept me there for a whole month before I trained somebody to take my place in the magnetron department. And I enlisted for that month in the Marine Corps, so I was in the Marine Corps for 1 month in reserve. Then when I trained the person for the taking my place at Raytheon, I joined the Marine Corps. They sent me to Paris Island. I did my duty there. Then they sent me to Camp Lejeune to be classified and see what I was good for. Of course, they were looking for riflemen, and I wanted to be in the airport, the air department, and they were over qualified, so that they had to look in their manual to see where I could fit in. And they asked me what I did with civilian life, and I told them I was a contractor, part of a contractor, my father's business, and they had no use for contractors. So they looked in their manual to find out where I could qualify, and they ran across the word magnetron, and it was listed in their manual as secret. And the only people that had magnetron and the use of radar were France and England. And so I was put in a classified area, and I trained me to learn more about the magnetron and the radar. And they shipped me in various parts of the country, and unfortunately I get seasick, and every time they put me on board ship I was sick for the length of the time of the trips. They put me on a flagship going out of San Francisco Bay. The bay was beautiful. The aircraft carrier I was on was so gentle, and I got seasick.
Yeah.
And I wound up seasick till we wound up in Honolulu. And of course, they don't make a direct trip. They go zigzag to avoid submarines. And when I got to Honolulu, I was waiting for transfer for a month, and they finally transferred me to I guess it was Guadalcanal. We didn't know much about it, and at first they put me unloading vessels, and finally they located where I was supposed to go, and they put me on radar duty, and we used to signal our people that Japanese planes were coming in, and we would locate them and advise our aircraft gunners to shoot them. And a lot of times the Japanese used to send out false attack planes, and they used to drop metal out of their planes so that when our radar picked them up, it looked like there was a fleet of a bunch of planes coming in. And the result was they had other planes coming in from a different direction, which they thought we would miss. But we were well trained, and we searched the whole line of sight, and we found planes coming in from another direction, and we would advise our anti-aircraft gun and our Air Force to attack the enemy. And that was my duty as long as I stayed on Guadalcanal till I was discharged. I can't remember what date I was discharged.
We'll go over that. April 2nd, 1946.
April what?
April 2nd, 1946.
April 2nd, 1946.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to stop here for a minute. Mario, we're going to go back a little bit. Why did you pick the Marine Corps?
Well, I figured I'd see action faster.
Okay. They want to know, when you went to basic training, at Paris Island, right?
Yeah.
How was that?
I managed to live through it. It was at a warm time of the season, and I had the fortunate position of coming from Massachusetts, and my drill instructor realized that, and he knew I was a Yankee, and he was a Southerner, and he used to step on my toes and and had me at attention and asked me to pick him up, Yankee, pick him up. and he was just, he must have just qualified for height in the Marine Corps. But he was always after me because he knew I was from Boston and I was a Yankee. But I survived.
Now,
I really loved the training that I got at the Marine Corps, and I think it has helped me to live this long life of 94 years old.
wow.
And in pretty good health. the aches and pains that I feel are received with good reception from me, because it means I'm still alive.
Yeah. Now, Mario, it says, according to your records, you enlisted in the Marine Corps on June 8th, 1943. You think it was a little bit sooner, but you got to Parris Island. They sent you by train to Parris Island.
Yeah.
Is that how you got there? So it had to be pretty hot.
Yeah.
Do you remember how long basic training was back then?
What?
How long was basic training? 8 weeks, you think? 8 weeks, 9 weeks?
I think it was about eight weeks.
8 weeks.
A couple of months.
And then, according to your records, they sent you to the signal school.
Huh?
According to your records, they sent you to the signal school for training.
Yeah.
How long at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina? How long were you there?
Well, a period of maybe more than 3 weeks, because they sent me from one class to another class as I completed each class.
And what was your training? What was your training in? Do you remember?
The training that they were giving me were about electronics, electricity, and radio. And unfortunately, the people that were training us didn't know much more about electricity, and I didn't really gain much from them, because I had a good training before that. And then they sent us off where they classified me for radar.
So you joined in June 43, and I have something in your records that says that you left San Diego on 10 April 1944 to go to the Pacific, and you were on board the USS Copahi. And
they have the ship I was on?
Yeah, it's right here. It's on your records, yeah. And you got to Pearl Harbor on 16 April 1944. Then you were waiting for another ship. Do you remember that?
No.
You don't remember that trip? Okay.
You remember, I get seasick, and I was laying on top deck. Shall I tell them about the sandwiches?
Not yet. So I'm trying to figure out. Okay, according to this one record, you got to Guadalcanal in July 1944. So it's April to May, June. That's 3 months. How long were you in Hawaii waiting for the next ship? Couldn't have been that long.
How long was I what?
How long were you in Hawaii? Do you remember?
No.
Okay, let's stop here for a minute. We're going to pick it up. So you're in Hawaii, but you don't remember how long. But
how long was I?
Yeah, you probably don't remember, do you? You were there for a couple months?
I don't remember.
Or a month? Yeah, you were waiting for a ship to get you to Guadalcanal.
Yes.
And you got to Guadalcanal. You had been promoted to corporal in August 1943. So you were a corporal when you went overseas. And you signed in to your unit on 24 July 1944. You were assigned to Headquarters and Service Battery, 3rd Anti-Aircraft Artillery Battalion. So that was the unit you were in overseas the whole time. And you talked about some of the duties. Now, according to your records, you were a radar technician. Can you tell me what you did as a radar technician?
Well, we operated and kept the radar equipment functioning. They were very large units. They had radar supplies and replacement parts, had 4 40-foot trailers with supplies and equipment to keep the radar. And the radars, we had a a unit that was called 270, and it had a big antenna. You could stand in the front of it. It would be a couple of feet off the ground and about 30 feet in the air and about 25 feet wide, loaded with signal panels, and they were very expensive. They were made by Raytheon, and I was a little familiar with them because when I was at Raytheon, I would see them manufacturing them and storing them in the storage yard till they were picked up. But the duties were basically, my duties were to keep the equipment, keeping it on signal, and we had radar operators that would watch the scopes and track the equipment coming in. But I never had that duty as an operator. I had to keep their equipment going, but I knew what it was all about.
Did you experience any Japanese bombing raids?
Excuse me?
Did the Japanese bomb Guadalcanal while you were there?
They bombed Guadalcanal, but not where we were fortunate. Where I was, we never got any effect from their bombing and their flights, because I imagine there were other radar units set up, and they must have contacted them before they got to us, or maybe they weren't. I can't believe we were the only radar on the island. There had to be more. Okay. You look on a map, it looks like a small island, but when you're walking around, it's a big island. And we had landing fields there, and I can remember at landing fields they used to bring in wire mats to make the landing field, and bulldozers would level the field, and they put the mats down, and then the planes would come in right after that.
What kind of aircraft? Navy aircraft? Marine aircraft?
Oh, they were mostly fighters.
From
fighting aircraft. I wouldn't know one from the other.
Yeah.
But it was amazing how fast the Seabees could get their jobs done. And the Seabees were very close to the Marines. And they acted as a unit together as one all the time. I can remember one time I was off duty and I was walking on the island, Guadalcanal, within a vicinity of a half mile or so, if that, and I was passing CB installation, and when they saw me walking, I was all alone. They invited me in, and they had just got through with lunch. They offered me lunch, and I had lunch, and then they were serving ice cream, and all the Seabees there that were having lunch, they all had their scoop of ice cream. And when I finished my lunch, I finished my ice cream, and before I know it, I must have had about 12 or 15 scoops of ice cream in front of me. The CB, all those guys passed all their ice cream over to me. Oh, I did a good job on it. I didn't let them down.
Can you, one of the questions, what else happened at Guadalcanal that you remember? It could be funny, it could be sad. I'm supposed to ask you about some funny things that happened to you, and I know that you pulled a few things when you were there.
Should I tell them?
Oh, why not? Sure, we're going to put it in the oral history. Yeah.
Well, of course, we were well encamped on Guadalcanal. We had our streets and alleyways.
You were living in tents, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the general that was in charge, I can't remember his name, and in front of his tent, he had what's that plant they got on?
Was it a mango, pineapple,
The other
coconut?
It's a small plant.
Not a mango? It's not a mango?
No.
Kiwi fruit? I don't know what it could have been.
Well, he had a plant, a fruit plant growing, I'll think of it, in front of his house, and he was taking real good care of it because he had one fruit on the plant, and I kept my eye on it till it got ripe, and then one night I reconnaissance around and picked his fruit, and I went and enjoyed it in the boondocks, dug a hole, buried the remains, and then went back to bed. In the morning, the general called complete duty, what do you call it?
Fill everybody in? You had a formation, right?
Yeah, called everybody to formation, full equipment, and he drilled us, and he never said what it was for, and I never told anybody what it was for, but he made every one of the Marines that were there, including me, march for about an hour, full dress. Of course, all we had was our khaki.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had our
You had your rifles.
and our rifles.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
around ones.
Yeah, M1 rifles. Yeah.
Yeah.
What else did you pull while you were there? You must have pulled something else. Well, tell me
No,
about
no,
this. Tell me about the sandwiches. You said something
Huh?
about. Tell me about the sandwiches. Was that on the ship? The sandwiches.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
When they were shipping us, the Marines, I was aboard a fishing boat. Wasn't American. It was somebody that the military had or hired or whatever, and they were transferring Japanese prisoners to somewhere, and they had Marines being transported also in the same ship. The Japanese prisoners had very nice accommodation upon the boat, and the Marines had miserable conversation. They didn't have bunks. They had to sleep on the decks, sleep on the floor, and they gave us lunches for that trip. And I can imagine with the lunches that they gave us, they must have packed them probably a month before they put them aboard the ship. And of course, once I got aboard the ship, I was seasick. So I stayed on the top deck, laid on the exhaust vent to keep warm, and my buddies would give me their lunches. They would give me their fruit, and I would give them my sandwich. I couldn't eat the sandwich, but the sandwiches were what they called ham and bread, and they used to the ham they used to call it hoscock. And the sandwiches, when you opened them up, they were green. That ham was green, but our guys ate it. You know, it's the only thing they had. But to keep me alive, they used to bring their food up and water from their vegetables, fruit, and bring it up to me in water. Kept me going. There were many nights that I'd crawl over to the side of the ship and look down and figure, I'm going to jump.
So,
It looked so far down, I changed my mind. And I was amazed. I never saw it, but saw a bunch of small fish flying around, jump out of the water, and they'd fly for a while, go back down. I didn't know what kind of fish.
How long were you on that boat?
Oh, I must have been on that boat for a week.
Really? So you were going from...
Because they used to go zigzag.
Yeah. So you were going to another island probably with your unit, don't you think?
Yeah.
Okay.
One time I was on a boat. I don't remember which one it was, but they dropped us off in New Zealand, and the people in New Zealand were so good to the veterans, the soldiers, and they used to invite us when they would be at the pier. They'd come down and invite us at their house and give us a steak. One island gave me a steak dinner because in New Zealand they grow cattle.
They got a lot of sheep too.
Yeah, and but they were dedicated to the helping the. Well, we were protecting their island anyhow.
Right.
But,
well, let's stop for a minute. Myro, they'd like to know, how did you stay in touch with your family when you were overseas? And and did you get what did they send you in the mail?
They used to, my wife used to mail me a stick of chewing gum or a package of tea, because those were things we never had over there. And she'd mail me a letter every day, and it was she didn't have to pay postage because it was signed Fleet Marine Force, and I got that whenever we got mail calls. Sometimes I'd get 6 or 8 letters, and sometimes I wouldn't get any. But that was how I got in touch with them and kept them informed. But before I left for the Marine Corps, I went on Had Liberty, and when I say I had liberty, it's you got to keep a question mark with that. But my wife, was Gertrude McLaughlin from Brookline, Mass. She came down with her best girlfriend as her maid of honor. My mother came down to Camp Lejeune with my brother Jimmy, and he was my best man, and we got married at Kinston, North Carolina, and I can remember the priest's name, Father Williams, and he married us.
When did you get married? You remember? Was it 1945 sometime you got married, when you got back from overseas? It's not in your record, so I don't know. Well, I'll look it up. I'll look it up.
I got married before I went overseas.
Oh, before you went overseas. Oh, I did. Okay, so you got married in 1944 then?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And that thing there, it'll tell you where I got married.
Okay. It's in your
the one
personnel file.
The one that you gave me, not this one.
Okay. All right. That's good.
That'll tell you where my father and mother came from.
Right. Yeah, they were born in Italy, according to the records there. Yeah.
I'm a first generation.
Yeah. And when did they come over? Before World War One? Yeah, they come over before World War One, obviously.
22. Yeah.
Yeah, before that. Yeah, sure. One of the questions on here is you have a lot of good memories about the Marine Corps.
Oh yeah.
And some of the things that you did in the Marine Corps. What I remember the story about the tires. You got tires for your vehicle.
We're not going to tell them that, are we? Should we tell them?
I think we should tell them. Yeah.
Okay.
Now tell us, you had your own car, which was very unusual, right? So you bought a car, but everything was rationed. Gasoline was rationed, tires were rationed. So what did you do to get gasoline?
When I got back from overseas, we were at Camp Lejeune. No.
Yeah, you were camp.
It was before I went overseas.
Oh, that you had a car.
No. Listen.
All right, let's stop it. Okay, so your brother Jimmy gave you a car. Can you tell me about that?
No, brother Frank.
Oh, brother Frank. Okay.
Frank gave me a car, and he brought it down to me. But of course, gas was rationed, tires were rationed. Was rationed even for the people at home, and I had the car, and I used to go into town, buy bread, buy ham, buy butter, and my wife and I would make sandwiches, and I'd sell them at night to the Marines in the barracks, because around 7 o'clock at night they were all looking for something to eat, and of course the PX was closed. So I managed to be able to buy the bread and the food with the money I got from selling the sandwiches. But the problem was gas was rationed, ties were rationed, so I had to find a way to earn their product to be able to barter. So I went to the clothing, what the hell they call that?
Well, quartermaster or
went to
supply room. You went to the supply room.
In Marine Corps, and of course they gave us our uniforms, and we give them as many as we wanted. We weren't rationed. And I made a deal with the man at the quartermaster to get his old turned, we used to call them blouses, turn the blouses in, and I used to take them over to the tailor shop, and I had them converted to the Eisenhower jackets, and I'd get the Eisenhower jackets, and I'd go to the quartermaster and give him, pass some around there, so they'd give me more jackets, and I take a jacket to the commissary, and I'd get the chief at the commissary, give him a jacket, and he would give me 10, 15 pounds of meat, steaks, and chops and stuff, and I'd go through the counter with it, and I'd have to pay $1.50 for it, and it was probably worth 20. And I'd take that meat and I'd bring it to some other guy who was over in Watertown, who lived in Watertown, and he had motor transport, and he had tires, and he wouldn't give me any tires when I asked him. But when I start bringing him Eisenhower jackets and food, we became friends. And he let me know one night, second lieutenant was taking his nurse out to the movie on the base, and told me the name, the number of the Jeep, and I got that. He says there'll be 4 tires in that thing, and you do what you want. So I had 4 marine tires, and the tires were marked on the outside, U.S. Marines, and I put them on my car, and I used to go through the gate with the Marine Corps tires, and there was a friend of mine that came from Medford, Hughie Davis. He was a pilot, and he crashed 2 planes, not in action, but landing on ships. And the result of the second one, his left leg became 2 inches shorter than the other, and that did not qualify him. But yet he had the Marine officer's pass, and he gave me his pass, and I used to attach it to the side of my car on my windshield, and when I went through the gate, I used to get saluted because they saw that insignia.
They saw the pass, yeah.
They thought I was an officer, and I'd go out and buy the bread, and with my wife and I'd make sandwiches and would sell them.
So that gave you a little bit extra income.
Huh?
That gave you a little bit extra income.
Yes.
Some extra money.
And my son Jim was born. He's a Tar Heel. He was born. We were in camp, was in the military camp. He was born.
Oh, he was born on the base?
Huh?
Was he born in Camp Lejeune, the hospital, or where? Or was he born in a civilian hospital?
Yeah. It says in there where he was born.
Okay. Hold on for a minute. So Mario, after you got back from Guadalcanal, you got back to North Carolina. They transferred you back to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. You got there sometime late January 45 or maybe February 45, and you were there for like another 13 months, and you were assigned, and so you had duty there at Camp Lejeune in the Signal Battalion.
I can't remember what they had me doing, which was really nothing.
Right.
Because when the bomb was dropped,
yep,
they kicked us all out.
Yeah, when you heard about the atomic bomb being dropped on Japan, the 2 bombs, what did you think?
I thought it was a blessing. Oh, you asked what we were doing. When I got back, they were reclassifying me from radar to signal battalion.
Okay.
To string telephone wires in enemy territory and handle telephone switchboard. They had regular switchboards for telephones coming in from different areas, and I learned how to fix all those, and they were teaching me how to climb trees.
Where were you when the bombs went off? And where were you in September 1945, August 1945, when the bombs went off?
I was at Camp Lejeune.
You were at Camp Lejeune.
Being reclassified.
Okay.
And if I wasn't reclassified, we'd have had to go and evade Japan.
Sure. Sure.
So that saved a lot of lives.
I'm going to stop for a minute. So Mario, we're going to go back a little bit. When you finished basic training, you were promoted to private first class. Can you tell me about that?
Yes. And we were shipped to Camp Lejeune for classification, and we were classified, and my buddies that were in my platoon that were classified different than myself. I was classified for radar, and they were classified for gunmen.
For riflemen.
Riflemen.
Yeah.
And the result was I kept track of them, we used to keep track of everybody with the Marine Corps magazine that came out, the Leatherneck, and within a month, most of my fellow that were in my troop were dead. They had been put in battle and were killed. And I'm so lucky, and I kind of got to say this to let everybody know. I believe I have a guiding angel looking over me. It might be Mac, it might be my father, mother, but somebody's looking over me, because all the occasions that I should have got killed, I survived.
Mara, you were discharged from the Marine Corps on 2 April 1946. So there you were. You'd been discharged. You had a wife and you had a son, right?
Yeah.
And it was time to drive back to Newton. So what was it like driving? You had a family. How was it going back home? And what did you do after you were discharged?
Well, my 5 brothers, during the war, of course, they were in essential jobs. They were all much older and married and had kids, so they couldn't get
They weren't inducted.
They weren't draftable.
Right.
And when I got back, they all incorporated into a corporation called 6 DiCarlo Brothers, and they included me, and they gave me 1 equal share of the corporation, which the only thing I had to contribute was my body, and we went into business, and of course business was wonderful. Everybody needed something, because during the war, with all the rationing, couldn't buy cars, you couldn't buy this, you couldn't get anything. So wherever work had to be done, we were able to do it because we had a good team. And my older brothers were all great mechanics. And what they used to do is go around the old farms and find out what kind of tractors they had and bulldozers that were run down and out of repair. They used to haul them in, repair them, and we wound up being the biggest contractor in Newton. And because we had all machines, even though they were relics, we could get jobs done. We could dig cellar holes, dig trench lines for water mains, sewers, and everything. And we were kept so busy. And the only time that we had to estimate jobs was on Sunday. And Sundays, we would go out, and whoever called us wanted a price would go estimate jobs and line them up. And the result of that job that I had there, I unfortunately, when my 2 kids were growing up, Susan and Jim, I never had dinner with them all the time they were growing up. I was always out working. And Mac was so good. She understood. And she was a Maine girl, and she had no ideas of grandeur. She was a perfect mate. Perfect.
Myra, you also went to, you used the GI Bill. I said you used the GI Bill to go to UMass.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell me, what was the name of that school at Stockbridge?
Stockbridge.
Could you tell, you went there, when did you go there?
Well, right after I got home and cooperated with my brothers, I decided, through under the GI Bill, went to the University of Massachusetts, which was a branch of vast state College, Bass State, yeah, College. That was a long time ago, and they got renamed the University of Massachusetts, and they had a school within it. There was a Stockbridge School of Agriculture. I was not interested in taking liberal arts. I wanted to know how to make a living, and Stockbridge was the thing. And they taught me how to be a landscape architect, taught me all the botanical names of the shrubbery and plants and grass growing and everything. And that was the greatest thing.
How long did you attend?
That was
about a year?
No, more than a year.
More than a year. Wow.
Yeah. I graduated, and the last month before graduation, we had a big snowstorm. I forget what year it was, and I didn't attend school, and the dean of Stockbridge would not give me my graduation ceremony rights, and the result, his secretary told him, "You collected all the GI money for him that month and you spent it. He gets his degree." Otherwise, after that time, because I was out working with the snowstorm with my brothers.
Right. I think, didn't you get an associate's degree?
Huh?
Didn't you get an associate's degree from
Yes.
Stockbridge? Yeah.
Yeah, associate.
Associates, yeah.
The associate degree came about, only a few years ago.
Okay, good. Good. So they took your course and gave you a degree. Isn't that nice? Mario, I'm going to read this question to you and think about it for a minute. How did your service and experiences affect your life and your outlook on the war and the military? What do you think your whole experience in World War II and the Marine Corps did for you?
What did my military life mean to me?
All your experiences and service in the Marine Corps. How did that shape your life?
I think the military was the three things most important in my life, and the military is included in it. And number one was I had a great family, mother and father and brothers. Number two, I had a most wonderful wife. And number three, I was a Marine. And the Marine life taught me how it can't be done. You have an assignment, it gets done. And I think the Marine Corps is one of the most important parts of my life, because we worked hard, but the Marine Corps taught me that there's no saying no. You have an assignment, that's it. You don't argue. You don't say, "I'll do it later." You do it now.
Well, I know the service in the Marine Corps is very important to you because you're wearing a Marine Corps shirt. Right behind you is a Marine Corps hat, a Marine Corps bag. In front of your house is the Marine flag next to the American flag.
Every room in my house has an American flag. Every room. Kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, office, guest room has an American flag.
Well, you're very patriotic.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to say about your service in World War II? Did we cover everything, or is there anything else that you might want to talk about?
Except, when did we join the... Oh, I was in the Lancers before the war.
I think after. Your brother Dino, he enlisted in the Lancers in 1948. So that's when, and you probably started in the Lancers sometime in the 1950s or 60s when you had time.
He was with the Lancers.
1948.
No, I think before in Boston.
1948. I have his records.
From Boston?
No, yeah, in Boston, 1948. Yeah, he wasn't involved before the war. After the war. Yeah.
As I remember, he used to go in there and drill. They had a place in Boston.
Yeah, Commonwealth Armory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He used to go in there and drill.
You're saying before World War II? Because I don't have my records say he joined in 1948.
No. And why I know, in front of the building,
yeah,
they had the National Lancers in a big stone.
Where was that? Was that they had a house in Brookline? Was that in Brookline?
No. Is that Brookline?
Well, was it the Commonwealth Armory or was it a big house?
No, Commonwealth Armory.
Okay.
Right in front of the building.
Yeah.
It was part of the structure. A lot of buildings put a stone like that out front.
Okay.
And it was there. And he wanted to take it and bring it up to Framingham. But by the time he got around to it, it was gone.
Well, they tore the building down like 2002, 2003, which and it was, they destroyed most of it. It's too bad.
That's when they made me general, was 2002.
So you were promoted to Brigadier General in the organized militia about 2003, I think it was 2003, 2000. General Kieth promoted you. Yeah. Okay, we're
going to. It's an insert.
You were the colonel of the National Lancers, and it was Brigadier General Kieth at the time, the Adjutant General, George Kieth, promoted you to Brigadier General. And you were the first, no, your brother Dino was a general in the Lancers too, in the militia. He was a major general. So can you tell me about your how you got promoted and your relationship with General Kieth?
Well, I met General Kieth as a colonel on several maneuvers because he liked to ride horses, and he was a great horseman. And while I was colonel, we became very friendly, and every time we met, we'd salute each other and ride together, and we had a great time. And then it came an opportunity for me to become a general, and he made me general, and at the ceremony, my wife pinned me on one side, and the general pinned me on the other side. And I was prepared for the pinning, and I asked all my friends that were colonels, can I ask the general for a hug? And they all, it's absolutely not done in the military. And if you don't ask for them, that's a no. And I waited, and I thought about it, and when the general pinned me, I said, General, can I have a hug? He grabbed me so fast, and we had a hug, and he and all his colonel, were you there?
Yeah, I was there.
Oh, you remember that?
Yes.
Well, and all you guys, yeah, you arranged a little luncheon.
Right.
Yeah. And those guys that came to that luncheon, if you remember, they sat in a corner, and I guess it was General Mangone and I.
Yes.
I didn't know what to do, and he cornered me and kept me involved without interfering with the guys.
Right. That was quite a day.
You know, you ought to write one about yourself.
One of these days.
I'll interview you.
Yeah, you'll interview me.